I'm Anna Hoffman, and welcome to this episode of Data Exposed Live. I'm super excited to have you all here today for our news update. So this is Data Exposed Live. We are streaming on Learn TV, Microsoft Developer, Twitch, as well as our Azure SQL YouTube page, and a few other places probably. We're going to encourage you to join us on Learn TV. On Learn TV, we have a great experience for you to kind of ask your questions, get your questions answered, and we do have people standing by to answer your questions on chat, as well as we will be able to answer some of them live with some of our special guests today. Now, before we get started, I also just wanted to give a brief warning. I recently had an eye operation, so I can't see the best. So I'm going to try my best today to stick with you guys and see and look at the camera. But if there are any issues with what I can and cannot see, please let me know. Let's see. It looks like our stream might be coming through a little blurry. Let me see if we have any comments really quickly. We're going to carry on if I don't hear anything otherwise. If you are streaming and you're having issues seeing me or I'm blurry or frozen, please give us a comment so we can try to make sure we address it. In the meantime, we're going to carry on forward with this episode of Data Exposed Live. This is the Azure SQL News Update. So this is an episode I run once a month, and we bring on lots of special guests and we talk about basically all the updates that happened in Azure SQL over the past month. And it's pretty crazy because when we started doing this, what I learned is that a lot of things happen in the Azure SQL and SQL Server space in a month. So today, in the next hour, we're going to walk through some of those things. You can see we have some great guests that are going to join us later in the episode, including Bob Ward, Marisa Brazile, Michelle Wallach, and Wee-Hong Tuck. So we'll also have some interesting data we'll also have some interesting Azure Data Factory updates. I'm not seeing any comments that you guys can't see or hear me, so I'm going to assume that you can. We're going to keep going. All right. So the first segment I always try to cover is big product updates. So these are product updates that land in the Azure Updates section. That's where I kind of go to look. And of course, I'm just looking at data-related things. So let's go ahead and start by talking about this first one. And I am getting a comment that I'm a little bit blurry. Hearing well, cam is pixelated. Okay, give me 1 second, you guys. Hold tight. I'm really sorry about this. All right, I'm back. Hopefully it's better. Again, sorry about the issues that we're having. I'm hoping that this helps a little bit with the camera. Otherwise, we're just going to keep on going. So this first update that I have is a general availability update. This is about dynamic data masking with granular permission. So this is an interesting one. And I also put a link to our YouTube channel because I actually got to sit down with the product owner for this, David Trigano, on Data Exposed just a few weeks ago, I think when we actually launched this. And he talked to us about this update as well as did some demos with one of the software engineers that actually built the product. So go ahead and check into this. This is going to allow you to give more granular masking permissions as opposed to just a whole table. You can also do at a schema level, table level, and even a column level. So this is something to look into. Definitely check it out. Again, I'm getting that I am frozen, but you can hear me. So we're just going to carry on. Again, really apologize about this. Not sure what's going on today with my internet connectivity. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about some recent update. This is a very exciting update about machine learning services. And, I thought, who better to talk to this about this than Michelle Wallig, who is the owner of machine learning services in SQL Server and Azure SQL. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and welcome Michelle on, and we'll get her screen up as soon as you're in full screen. Michelle, thanks so much for joining us today.
Great. Hi, everybody. I'm Michelle Wallig. I've been at Microsoft for 16 years now, and I'm the proud owner of Machine Learning Services for Azure SQL Server, Managed Instance, Edge, and Azure Arc. Today, I'm really excited to share with you the news we had a couple of weeks ago where we went general availability with Machine Learning Service on Managed Instance. It was I didn't even realize myself how highly anticipated it was. I had 3,300 views on the announcement and about 100 congratulations, as well as amplifications of the announcement. So thank you very much for that. I'm going to go over a few things and have a very short demo. We do have a longer broadcast that Anna and I are going to do, a podcast that's going to go into much more detail about this GA feature. But really getting started is super easy. It really requires a support request on the Microsoft Azure portal. I'm just going to go over there real quick, and you'll bring up your Azure portal. You want to just ask for machine learning on managed instance. The issue type is a subscription management type. So you're going to ask for a subscription, and then it'll be set up within a day generally, because this is a PaaS environment. I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a minute. And so it'll be really easy to get set up, and then you will be migrating the databases and your packages and your models to the environment yourself. We can certainly assist along the way if you have any issues. So let me open up the announcement real quick. So this is the site that where the documentation is. There's an overview. I'm going to go over some of the key differences in a minute. We got quick starts out there, tutorials, how-to guides. But basically, since SQL Server 2016, we've offered machine learning services in the form of R programming language, and then later on we added Python in 2017, and then 2019 we've added Java. And I wanted to share with you some of the capabilities that people were looking for. So if you were doing it on premise, now you can do it in the cloud. You can run your R and Python scripts for your data and management and preparation. You can train your machine learning models in database. This is a huge feature that customers were looking for, where you're not having to move your data around. You just bring your machine learning services to the data. And then deploy your models and scripts in stored procedures and into production. We do support the other open source packages and frameworks such as PyTorch, TensorFlow, and Scikit-learn, as well as the Microsoft packages. There's 2 here showing for Python and the 4 for R. Enabling it is very simple through the Azure Data Studios, which I'll show you in a minute. It's really just adding the extension for machine learning. You can also do it through your SP configure statement here, and then in a failover group as well. And at the bottom of this announcement are links to other information about running scripts and key differences I'm going to go over in a second.
Awesome. Thanks, Michelle. And I just wanted to step in and say, what's really great about this is that it's the same functionality that folks are used to using in SQL Server. I think the biggest difference is just how you configure it, right?
Yes, that's the biggest difference right now. But the benefits of having the PaaS environment is really the key here. We worked with customers who wanted to really get into the cloud in an easy way. This is a frictionless way to get into the cloud with your SQL Server machine learning capabilities. Sorry, let me try to swap over here. I'm just going to bring up a demo. It's a longer demo, which I'll
In
be
this
able to
demo,
share,
I
but
will be showing you
this
how
will
to
just
use
show some of
machine
the
learning
initial features.
extension in Azure Data Studio to manage packages in R or Python and manage models in Azure SQL Managed Instance and Azure SQL Edge. I have installed machine learning extension in my Azure Data Studio. I am connecting to my Azure SQL Managed Instance. I'm gonna go ahead, right click and select Manage. This will open up a new window. From here, I can select machine learning to open up machine learning extension view. I can select manage packages in database. This will open up a new pane that will list all the packages that I have installed on my instance. This will list the Python packages that I have in my instance. I can select Add New to search for Python packages to install or update existing packages. The extension will list all the version that is available for that package. I'm gonna go ahead and close this because I'm not gonna install or update existing packages. Next, I'm gonna show you how to manage model in my SQL instance. I'm gonna select import or view model. I will have to pick a database and a table that contains my model. In this case, it's already pre-selected for me. I only have one model in that models table. I will import a model from my local machine to my Azure SQL Managed Instance. I'm gonna go ahead and select import models. From here, there are two options, either file upload or import a model from Azure Machine Learning. Since I have my model on my local machine, I'm gonna select file upload. I will be selecting the model files. I can enter the name and the description of the model. Then I can select which database and which table this model will be uploaded to. In this case, I have models table pre-created already, so I will be using that. If I do not have the table, I can choose to create a new table and the extension will create a table for me. I'm gonna go ahead and click deploy, which will upload the model from my local machine into my Azure SQL Managed Instance. And you can see that the new model is uploaded into a models table. I'm gonna go ahead and close this. We can also confirm that the model is uploaded by selecting from models table. You can see that our new model is already uploaded into the models table. Next, we will be using this model to do a prediction on the data that I have.
So I'm going to save the rest of this for the podcast. Let me switch back over to the presentation. I'm going to talk a little bit now about understanding what is a managed instance and how does it work with the machine learning services. So managed instance also went GA last fall, and it is part of our PaaS environment offerings here. It's the first one here, along with single and elastic pool offerings for PaaS. The customers that we worked with, there were about 30 that worked with us in the preview since last summer, really were looking for their initial entry into the cloud. They had been doing all the machine learning services on premise, but they wanted a way to easily lift and shift their environment from the database to the models to packages, have a fully managed PaaS. They didn't want to worry about the infrastructure, and they wanted all the advantages such as full isolation and security from Azure. So I'm not going to go through this here, but here's the site for the SQL managed instance. It talks about what's new, how the features are, the different levels of and security capabilities, things that the customers wanted, like automated backups, software patching, as well as resource management deployment. The pricing model is really based on a vCore-based purchasing model. The machine learning services extension comes with managed instance. It's one of the top 5 features mostly requested. And this goes into a little bit about the different purchasing models based on the vCore usage, and then service tiers. This general purpose means you could build a dev or test environment, as well as once you go into production, move it into a business critical environment. There's a link here as well around pricing. And you can actually, check, the pricing of those, the general purpose tier. You can filter on what region you are, currency, and by hour or by month.
Awesome. Thanks, Michelle. One thing I'd love to learn a little bit more about before we close out on this segment is, where are we headed, now that we've GDA'd, what are some of the things that you and the team are working on?
Yeah. So really, our customers are looking for more and more machine learning. Pretty much every customer we talk to wants to get into AI and machine learning. We're going to be this year working with the managed instance team in particular for this GA to find out what are other features, what is the type of usage, what are the use cases that our customers are using these scenarios for. So in the preview, we had 30 customers, as I mentioned, people that were looking for PaaS benefits. We had everything from a smaller SMB company with a single database to very large multinationals with multi-terabytes. Some of the other capabilities that is frequently requested, since it's an Azure environment, one of the things that we don't have right now, but we will, is around pools. So right now, it's not supported on the managed instance pools for multi-tenant. That isn't currently in preview. And once that's out of preview, then we'll work with the managed instance team to leverage that. So in this document called, it's our release notes, basically. There's a few things here as well. Right now in the SQL managed instance, we have the latest version of Python and our runtime. We've been asked by customers about other runtime availability, so that is yet to come. And then this goes into some of the other capabilities, resource governance. We're not limiting our resources right now. The default is set to a maximum of 20% of the available, but this can be overridden by creating a support ticket. So being able to manage the environment better is an upcoming feature. And then we did have like an insufficient memory error, which we helped customers with by moving to higher service tiers. So these are the types of things that we're looking at to improve for the next release.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Michelle. This has been really interesting, really useful. I think, this is, again, just how we're making Azure SQL Managed Instance really so that you can get the best of SQL Server with the best of a managed service. And with that comes all these instance scope features that you get with Managed Instance. Again, we're going to share some resources in the blog update that accompanies this video. So be sure to check that out and get some more resources. Start doing machine learning with Managed Instance. The value prop of in-database machine learning without having to move any data is such a big one. So Michelle, I just thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you. Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks. Awesome. Okay, cool. So that was Michelle. Wonderful. And we have a few comments I just want to address really quickly. Looks like we were able to fix my internet settings. I apologize for that. And we also got a question about the on-demand episodes. You can find all our on-demand episodes. So if you missed the part of it or you're joining us a little bit late, you can go to Data Exposed Live to check out any of our older episodes. We have a ton of episodes that we do all the time. We're also going to talk about some of those episodes. Okay, so moving on, we have lots more updates to cover. I wanted to cover a few other things that are new in Azure SQL Managed Instance. Since Michelle was talking about some machine learning services in Managed Instance, I wanted to mention two other things that recently came into preview for Azure SQL Managed Instance. One is a cross-instance service broker. So this is a big one. This has been a long time ask from customers. So definitely go check that one out, as well as long-term backup retention, or LTR. Now, this is something that was already available for Azure SQL Database. So I think customers have been really looking forward to this capability of being able to maintain backups for like up to 10 years in Managed Instance, just like they can in DB. And that's what this capability brings to the table. Now, the next thing that we wanted to talk about is another really exciting public preview that came on related to Azure Monitor SQL Insights. And for that, I'm super excited because I'm actually going to bring on a guest, a special guest, Bob Ward. Hi, Bob, to talk to us about Azure SQL Insights.
Hey, Anna, it seems like I was just with you yesterday. Never been on the show before. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, happy to have you here. We'd love to hear from you. You know, what is this Azure SQL Insights thing? And maybe you even have something you can pull out for us to show us.
Well, as you mentioned before, when we've been talking about Azure SQL, performance sometimes is kind of my jam. A little bit about how you get insights on SQL Server. So it was pretty exciting that a few weeks ago, we announced a public preview of something called SQL Insights. So here's the problem space. You're a SQL person. You can monitor things inside SQL with things like dynamic management views, query store, et cetera. You can get a look at things inside the server once you connect to it, right? Now, we've always had Azure Monitor as an ecosystem in the Azure space where you could see some things outside SQL within the Azure ecosystem, but it was kind of limited. So the other challenge is that you typically use Azure Monitor to look at each resource, whether it was SQL Server and Azure VM, whether it was Azure SQL Managed Instance, or even a set of Azure SQL databases. But how could you look at it all together? How could you get a more holistic view, get more telemetry, and do it in a way that's very customizable and consumable? Hence, this is what Azure SQL Insights is all about. Look at this chart. Look at this slide right here. We are using, get ready for this one, we're using open source, Anna, something called Telegraph. Telegraph being an open source concept to collect rich series of telemetry data, kind of in a time series fashion. And we built a SQL Server plugin to work with Telegraph. So the concept being is that you will deploy what's called a monitoring virtual machine. Today, we use Ubuntu for that because Telegraph works well in that environment. We've got a thing set up in the portal for you to set this up. It's not that difficult. You set up a virtual machine. We deploy Telegraph for you automatically in there. And then you go tell us in a very declarative way, what Azure SQL assets would you like to monitor? VM, database, managed instance. You tell us through like connection strings, here's what I want to monitor. We will use the power of SQL because things like DMVs are built within the engine. We're going to use the power of that, but we're going to construct some very rich queries against that to collect this data. Here's the other cool thing about this. So, we're using Telegraph, we're collecting the data from the engines. You can see it in the portal, but we're going to use Azure Log Analytics to produce the information, which means since there's a rich API for that, you could use Log Analytics API to consume it yourself and display it anywhere you want. So why don't I show it to you? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be awesome. I'd love to see it if you have it ready.
I do. So what you're looking in front of right now is like a client using Management Studio. Everybody's kind of seen this before. And Anna, we've talked about this kind of before, but Azure SQL includes dynamic management views to look at overall resource usage. You can see in this example, we are behind the scenes collecting resource information at the SQL level. And in here, you can see the average CPU percent for my Azure SQL database got pretty high. So this is an example of just using like T-SQL to look at this. But what if, for example, you really don't want to run T-SQL? You don't want to go detailed in the DMVs, or you don't want to join like 7 DMVs to go get rich information. Like, is there a better way? Well, first of all, let me show you what it looks like from the Azure Monitor experience itself just for this database. So I'm going to flip over here, and I'm going to show you this database. This is Azure Monitor that you look from a default pane, and you've seen this before, right?
Right.
You see this basic chart right here showing just compute utilization. And there's other things you can look at, like data IO and log IO. And it too could be redirected to a log, like for log analytics, right? But I want something richer. So I'm going to show you now what this looks like with SQL Insights. Let's flip over to another view in the portal I've got set up here. I'll flip over for you right here. This is SQL Insights for this database. And you can see here, it's showing me that same CPU percentage I had before in a little bit more of a different way from a chart. And this is my Telegraph monitoring machine, monitoring the information from SQL and displaying it here in what's called a workbook. Okay, the workbook is a kind of a visualization on top of the log analytics. But here's what gets interesting. Now I see memory utilization and data IO. This is just our default workbook we're showing you. But then it gets a little more interesting. Look at the other rich stats we're going to pull out for you. What if you're a developer? I want to see how many processes are getting blocked or deadlocks occurring, or how many just connections in total. I want to see space usage information. And then this is really powerful. People use weight stats all the time to go look at performance problems, and they're looking at DMVs. We're going to show you in a visual way, what are the top weights that you may be seeing in your environment. So this is really cool looking at it for a single database. But what if I want to go further? I told you I could monitor different assets across all of Azure SQL. So let's take a look at what that looks like. So a different view of that might look something like this. Now, it doesn't look all that powerful, but what if I clicked on databases here? These are databases I've set up to go monitor, and it's going to show me the series of databases I've set up. Now, you see here there's 4 different databases, but look at this, Anna. This is a business critical tier. I can monitor now the primary and the secondary. Whoa.
That's pretty cool.
That's cool. That's pretty nice, right? Now, you may say to yourself, well, that's interesting. It's just showing the databases. They're all online. But what else are you seeing here? Now, I'd like to see information across these databases. So I'm going to click on resource info. Now, look at that. I can start seeing now a table of CPU, memory, and IO across the databases in a pattern. We even start highlighting with little colors here which one are taking up the most usage. It gets even better. I'll click on activities. Now I'll look at it for a transaction point of view. Batch requests per second are one of the most popular ways to look at SQL throughput. I can look at my throughput across all my databases now. That is pretty impressive, right? Then I'm going to go back over here and look at space usage. Now, these are just the default workbooks that we've built for you against these databases. I can look at transactions, another view of me seeing like what is kind of like my transactional throughput maybe, or maybe just overall IO. I'd like to see, do I have any IO latencies going on? And I can see that view as well. And Anna, any database I set up to monitor, I can see that. This is interesting. And there's some really rich telemetry that you don't get access to before, but I really want to, what is that term you use for me? I want to go hyper-focused. So I'm going to click on Explore Metrics. And if you're a perfmon person, if you're used to seeing a lot of performance monitor counters, look at this. I can go click on all this stuff. This gets a little crazy. In fact, let's do something here. Let's go down here and, oh gosh, there's so many here. I'm not even sure what I want to look at here. I'm just going to look at like logins per second. And if I click on logins per second, I can do this across all the instances, or I can even say, you know what, let me just see what it looks like across all my databases that I just showed you. This is powerful. This is the way now that I can look across a rich set of telemetry, across different metrics, and across all my assets versus having to go inside each Azure SQL asset. And as I showed you earlier, if I go back to monitor, look here, I've got managed instance set up. I can even do SQL Server in Azure Virtual Machine and even availability group replicas that are part of that. This is pretty groundbreaking stuff for anybody who wants to get rich telemetry and monitor across a lot of Azure SQL assets.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks so much for showing us, Bob. This is really cool. I myself am going to need to go play with that. You know, while you were presenting it, we did get a few questions, of course.
Sure.
Just to call them out. One person commented on your haircut, which is quite nice. But they also
wow, okay, that's interesting.
But they also said, is Azure Insights only for Azure hosted SQL servers?
Yes, today. We just did public preview for this. Imagine a world, though, where things are connected to Azure for everything you have. And if you imagine that world, now you can imagine there might be something possible to go do a connection to any SQL thing you have. It doesn't exist today. But today, anything you have to deploy in Azure itself, whether it's a VM, MRI database, wouldn't that be nice if we kind of went that direction? Thanks for the haircut.
But you can monitor your, like you showed us, your SQL servers that are running in virtual machines, just not if they're running out of Azure at this point.
Correct. But as you know, Anna, we've talked about the fact we would like to connect. We would like to make SQL cloud connected at some point, right? Like even where it runs where you have it. And imagine if we had that all set up, we could show you this rich everywhere. So pretty excited about that. And another thing I wanted to show you just real quick, if we have a few moments here, I know you have maybe some other questions, is look at this screen here. This is to kind of demonstrate to you, this is the Telegraph GitHub repo, okay, that's open source. Here's our plugin. So if you wanted to go see what queries are we running, you can actually go in here and see all the different DMVs we're running. These are Go programs, basically, to run a Telegraph. So when you deploy that monitoring machine, you can go here and see what queries are running. And the other thing to show you a little bit, because you may want to consume this log analytics API stuff. So let me show you here. Yes. No, that's not it. Gosh, there's too many windows, Anna. I have too much to show you.
So many demos, yeah.
Let's see. Oh, here it is. Sorry, it's up at the top. I guess I lost it here. In our documentation, maybe it's back here. In our documentation that we have, let me put this here. Let me go down here. Yes, here it is right here. This is what I wanted to show you. Do you see this?
Yep.
This is kind of your API. So you're like, hey, I want to consume that log analytics stuff, but what is possible even to collect? See all the things. So we document all the objects we're doing, the names of them, and the namespace. So if you're going to do log analytic APIs and build your own workbook, for example, you can though now know, okay, what objects do I pick to get IO, memory, wait stats, et cetera. So it's extensible, it's consumable, it provides insights outside of your SQL connections to see everything you need. I'm super excited to see the future of this thing.
Yeah, I mean, it seems pretty exciting. I think, you know, there's so many options. You can either take this rich set of dashboards that we've gone ahead and created for you. You can customize them, make your own workbooks. You can even, like you mentioned, scrape the data and take it into somewhere else and analyze it and build your own dashboard. So, you know, Bob, thanks so much for joining us today. I am going to put up a banner. Here's the URL if you want to go read more about Azure SQL Insights. And, you know, I also wanted to call out that we are running a Data Exposed live episode in May. So if you want to follow along with that, you just can go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel. I put that at the bottom link as well. So Bob, again, thanks so much for joining us. And, you know, we'll look forward to having you on the show again soon, hopefully. Thanks, Hannah. Thanks for everybody listening in today. Enjoyed being here. Awesome. All right. So we got a jam-packed day. We're going to keep on rolling. Okay, so we talked about Azure SQL Insights. The next announcement I wanted to talk about is related to availability. So we're going to switch gears a little bit and talk about some things related to Azure SQL Database. Now, recently we started doing this thing called zone redundancy. And some of you might be familiar with this. It's the idea of adding availability zones to a given region. So you can basically specify to make your database zone redundant, and we'll spread copies of your database across different availability zones. And this is going to protect you from things like huge power outages. In one data center, you'll still have copies in another data center or building within a given region. So this is awesome. This is something that is moving across a bunch of Azure services, not just Azure SQL Database, but we recently just announced the zone redundant configuration for Azure SQL Database serverless. So that means now you can have zone redundant databases in Azure SQL Database for your business critical databases and your general purpose databases, whether they're provisioned or serverless databases. And if this isn't something you know a ton about, I definitely recommend looking into it. It's some really interesting capabilities we're investing in. And I have another resource for you later in this if you want to learn more about that, how as we think about it as Azure All Up, specifically from our Azure CTO, Mark Russinovich. All right, now the other update that I had is the general availability of DNS aliases for Azure SQL Database. So you can see here, I've put up some scenarios for why you might use this. But basically what we're doing is we've released these PowerShell and REST APIs to accept calls to create and manage DNS aliases for your logical server SQL Server name. So why might you be interested in doing this? Well, one, you can give it an easy to remember name, which I'll show you an example in just a second. You might have a test server and a staging server and a production server, and now you can just use aliases. And when you update those pointers underneath, you don't have to go update your connection strings and all your client applications or tools that are using it. You can also use this to move a database to another server, or if you do a geo restore, it used to include some amount of downtime because you have to go update all the connection strings, but now you can protect yourself against this. So this morning, I said, this seems pretty cool. I wonder how hard it is to set this thing up. So naturally, I went to the documentation. Let me just log into this virtual machine, and I'm just going to show you guys a really quick example. What we have over here is we have a SQL Server name and another SQL Server name. So these are basically two Azure SQL logical servers. And then I just want to use this one alias everywhere and a test server. So I can basically set the context. Let's hope this is still active. So we can go ahead and set the context. Of course, we're getting a little bit of a lag here. Here we go. And then it's a pretty easy command. So if I kick this off, what you'll see is I just have to use new Azure SQL Server DNS alias. Easy enough. Specify the resource group, the SQL Server name, and the alias name I want to use. And then I can return, the alias name and the associated server. So then if I hop over to SSMS, I can just connect. I know this is a little small. I can just connect to Anna test server, whether or not it's pointing to this or something else. So maybe one day I'm doing testing on SQL Server, this SQL Server 1, which is AWS Server 0602. And then another day I want to do some different testing on 0333. So I can then very easily go ahead and move it. So let me kick this off. And what you'll see is it's just using a set command. So these are pretty basic PowerShell commands that you're used to using, kind of the same verbiage. And you're able to basically say, okay, if my other server's in a different resource group, what's the name of it? What's the new target server? What's the alias we're moving? And then we can just specify those things and move the resources. And now you can see down here that the alias is now assigned to my other server. Now, from my testing, I did notice this does take a few moments. So if I come in here, I think it takes like 2 or 3 minutes. So that's something to be aware of. But basically, we can come in here, and now this is actually my 0333 server. My 0602 server has like 15 databases in it. So that was just a cool example I thought I'd share with you all since it was so easy to set up. You can also remove it just by using that remove command. So this is something cool to set up. I think it's going to make a lot of people's lives a lot easier. Of course, there's a lot of rules and guidance around how you should use DNS aliasing, and I'm not going to be the one to tell you how to do that. But this is something interesting to me. We've seen some interesting feedback already, so definitely something to check out since this is now generally available. Okay, so now we're going to do something exciting. This is the first time we're doing something like this on the Data Exposed News update. This is a big one. What we're going to do is we're going to bring on the leader of the Azure Data Factory team, because I know all of you working with Azure SQL are also working with Azure Data Factory too. And if you're not, maybe you should think about some of the use cases that you might consider using it. But for that, I'm going to go ahead and bring on Weihong. Hey, Weihong, thanks for joining us. Oh, I can't seem to hear you, Weihong.
Hey, thank you, Anna. Can you hear me?
I can. Thanks for joining us. You know, this is a new segment for us, but I think, you know, what we wanted to do is just kind of bring you on and have you tell us, you know, what's new in Azure Data Factory, because so many customers are using both services.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, first of all, thank you for working with the Azure Data Factory team, right, to drive a lot of these product innovations I'm going to show you today. And, you know, like when Anna and I was discussing about this, we thought, you know, it will be a good idea for us to be able to share with you some of the exciting things that's happening in Azure Data Factory land. And this is also one of the feedback that we get, right, from across all the product roundtables, Ask the Expert, and also the recently concluded MVP Summit. And so we put together all the updates, right, that's happened since the beginning of the year till now. And at a glance, today, Azure Data Factory is already available in about 30 plus Azure regions. And just about a week ago, we just added Norway East as well as UAE North. Right. Now, the other thing that's top of mind for a lot of the healthcare customers or folks in the healthcare industry, right, is being HIPAA compliant. And so one of the things that we've completed as well, which you can find in the Azure Trust Center, is really Azure Data Factory is now certified for high trust. Now, other things that you see on the slide, I'm not going to go through every single one of them, but what you can see here is really exciting innovation that has happened across from, you know, the availability of dual standby for SSIS integration runtime for a lot of the HA scenario, all the way to improvements around CI/CD, you know, a lot of the things that we added into the Azure Data Factory Studio, right, in order to enable you, right, to be productive with Azure Data Factory. Now, other things that you see here is whether it's from connectors, from new transformation that's in data flow, right, to a lot of the kinds of innovations that happen when you use Azure Data Factory to write files to ADL Gen 2 in a Delta Lake format, we have made significant improvements. And so I'm not going to go through every single line of this, but I'm going to share with you some of the key highlights. One thing that got us really excited about is the Azure Data Factory and Azure Purview integration. Now, one of the things that we've been hearing from the community for a while now is this ability to bring data integration and data governance together. And I think by bringing these two really powerful products together, it enables organizations to derive tremendous insights, not just into the data assets, but into the lineage, but also be able to enforce policies and more. And we can't wait to see what you can do with Azure Data Factory and Azure Purview. I'm going to show you a demo on this later. Now, the other thing that's really super exciting is being able to use Azure policies with Azure Data Factory, right? And many a times we hear a lot of conversations around, well, you know, can we enforce things around the naming of the resources in Data Factory? Or can we enforce some of the security requirements to make sure that every Data Factory that is created is secure by design? And so Azure policies, today we launch about 7+ out-of-the-box Azure policies that will work with Azure Data Factory. Now, the third thing that's really exciting to us is the following. Now, for a while now, you know that we are in Azure Data Factory, we have this notion of triggers, but more importantly, triggers that respond to storage events, for example, blob created or blob deleted. And in a lot of this conversation as product roundtables, Ask the Expert, right, and our connection with the MVP as well as the RD community is really that notion that, well, you know, why stop at blob created and blob deleted event, but being able to respond to all custom events, right, that you are putting into the event grid. And so one of the things that we did is really we renamed the blob created and blob deleted event, and we call them storage event. But more importantly, now we introduce the ability for you to have custom events. Anything that you can push into the event grid, we can subscribe to it and kick off a pipeline for you. Now, the possibilities of this notion of event-driven ETL is just limitless. Now, the other thing that is included in this update is really that, you know, today Azure Data Factory allows you to have Azure Data Factory as part of your data ops, right? And being able to then publish Azure Data Factory resources, if you will, in your CI/CD pipeline. Now, one of the things that we've added here is now the ability for you to not just export, but validate your Azure Data Factory code before you kick off the deployment. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to switch on to the demo just to show you some of these exciting updates that have come.
Awesome. Yeah, we'd love to see some examples of some of this. Seems like you guys are doing a lot.
Thank you, Anna. So one of the things that you see here is really we pack all these updates that we're sharing today in a blog, and then later on we'll share with you the URL for the blog. Now, so let's get on to Data Factory. Now, what you see here is, of course, the familiar Azure Data Factory Studio that everyone would have been using for a while. And the first thing I'm going to show you is really storage event and custom event. Now, what do we mean by that? Now, if you go to manage today, of course, if you click manage, you would then be able to then go to triggers. And you would have created a trigger. And as you know, in Azure Data Factory today, you have different kinds of trigger. You could do a schedule trigger. You could do a tumbling window trigger. But as I was sharing with you earlier, the blob created and the blob deleted is now called storage event. And if you click on it, of course, then you could then use this as a way to monitor for all things that gets dropped into your ADL Gen 2, right? And be able to respond to this event in order to kick off a pipeline. But one of the things that we have added, right, very recently is this notion of a custom event. Now, right now it's in public preview. And what we mean by that is that if you select custom event, now you can connect to your event grid, right? And you can connect to any of this event grid and monitor for things that you're interested about. You could say, well, you want the subject to begin with some specific things that you're looking for. And now with that, you can kick off your pipeline. Super exciting. Now, the other update I wanted to share with you is really that notion of bringing data integration and data governance together. Now, as many of you will know, in December last year, right, we announced a public preview of Azure Purview. And since the announcement of Azure Purview, many of you has been asking us to say, well, data governance, data integration, put it together, you have limitless possibilities. And so today, you could go manage again. And if you click Azure Purview, within the Azure Data Factory UI, you can connect to a Purview account. And once you have connected this to a Purview account, right, not only can it discover all your ETL lineage, but more importantly, be able to action upon them and get tremendous insight on it. How do you go about doing it? Assuming you have an Azure Purview account that has been created, you say connect to a Purview account. Now, from your Azure subscription, you can choose which Purview account. In this case, I'm just going to connect to the Contoso Purview 2021 account. And once I'm connected to it and I click apply, what is going underneath the hood is that now we've connected Azure Data Factory, Azure Purview together. Now, Azure Purview is just going to start scanning all the pipelines that is in the Data Factory and be able to establish the end-to-end lineage that give you an answer or insights into where the data originated, what kind of transformation has happened, but more importantly, be able to then get this into your Purview catalog and be able to then leverage this for you to search for the assets that you otherwise would not have found, or be able to do impact analysis and lineage, right? To be able to understand, well, if I do something to this upstream data sources, what is going to happen to the end downstream sink, if you will. Now, at this point, of course, the Purview account has already been created, and you could then, of course, disconnect it if you choose to connect to another Purview account, or you can continue waiting for Purview to start scanning a Data Factory in order to get all this ETL lineage sucked into Azure Purview. Now, the last thing I'm going to show you in this demo is really that notion of being able to write to ADL Gen 2, right, in the Delta format, but more importantly, being able to take advantage of the capabilities that's available, that's provided by the Delta format. So what you see here right now is a simple data flow. I'm reading data from a source. I'm doing some joins. I'm doing some lookup, right? But more importantly, as you see, if I add a sink right now, and this sink is using an inline data set where the data set type is Delta. Now observe what happens, right? If I go all the way down, of course, you could allow schema drift, which has been there for a while. But if I click settings, you'll see that now we have the typical update method. But if you expand on the Delta options, boom, right? What do you see here? Now, besides the ability to merge schema, one of the top asks from the community is really to support auto compact and optimize, right? Now, and of course, if you do a checkbox on this, and if you hover around this, you'll realize that now we are now able to auto compact all your files and run a quick optimized job, right? To further compact the file so that you have partition that has the most number of small files. Super powerful. Now with this feature, now we have tremendous support for the Delta format, right? And if you're going to plan to use it, right, this is already available.
Awesome.
Now, thank you, Anna. Now, before we close off the demo, the last piece I wanted to show is really the pass transform. Now, you might notice this if you click plus, and if you go all the way down, you will have the pass transform. Now, what it does is it takes your JSON and all this complex document types, if you will, and enable you to break them into columns that you could then pass to your downstream transform or to write to a sink. So with that, let me hand it over to Anna. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to share about some of this exciting product update for Azure Data Factory. And we look forward to hear all the feedback from the community.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Weihang. This has been really, really useful. And it seems like y'all's team is doing so much. So just thank you so much. And we'll have to have you back on the show sometime soon.
Thank you, Anna.
Awesome. Cool. Okay, so we are spinning around. We got about 10 minutes. We're going to fly through some stuff. I want to remind you that everything I covered today is going to be released in URL to form at aka.ms/news update. So if you missed something or you want to dive deeper into anything anyone has talked about on the show today, you can find all the details there. All right, so as far as Data Exposed goes, we've been doing a lot. So we have a ton of new episodes out, pre-recorded episodes, which are shorter form videos. Those are those top videos. You can see we even bring on MVPs from the community to talk about the things that they're working on. This is really interesting because David Trigano especially has come on and done things in tandem with actual releases. So you can kind of see all the new capabilities. We're trying to line those up with Data Exposed. We also had several live episodes this month. You can see the topics were really interesting. I definitely recommend going through and checking out any of these episodes that might be interesting to you. We've had speakers like Bob Ward, Buck Woody, David Pless, Pam Lahoud, Elaine Dormel. We've got lots of people, Raj Pochiraju, on the show to talk about all these really complicated or new topics and go deeper into them. And that's what we've done with Data Exposed Live this month. So you're not going to want to miss these. So go check them out. Okay, now we're going to switch over to some blogs. There were a lot of blogs this month. So I'm just going to highlight a few. And then, like I mentioned, you can get the URLs to all of them in the news update blog that I wrote. So use a blog to navigate all the blogs. Makes sense, right? Now, Rohan Kumar, CVP of Azure Data, recently released this blog, and I just thought it was really interesting because he talks about the themes of all the announcements that happened back at Microsoft Ignite at the beginning of March. So this is a great way to get all your updates kind of in a consolidated fashion, and you can see the direction that he's taking our team is really in that direction of transforming businesses. So definitely check that out. They talk a lot about the new migration experience as well. I mentioned earlier that Mark Russinovich has done some interesting series recently. Mark Russinovich is our CTO of Azure, and he's also a very popular speaker in the community, and there's no surprise as to why if you watch one of these videos. So every year he does this Inside Azure Data Center Architecture videos, and this year it has like 22 demos. It's really interesting, so definitely check that out. And it's interesting to see how data centers change so much over the course of 1 year when the last time he does the video. The other thing he released was a blog about business continuity management and how we think about it as a business and an organization all up. So this is interesting when you think about high availability and disaster recovery for Azure SQL, but one level higher and how we're thinking about that for Azure all up. So definitely check that one out too. And finally, we had a huge release related to Azure Migrate and discovering, assessing your services. So if you go to our YouTube page, I actually did a deep dive with some of the members of our migration team to talk about these updates and how it's making it easier for people to move from, say, SQL Server to Azure SQL. SQL Server Tech Community blog is full of new updates. Definitely check those out. I think the especially interesting one for me, at least, was by Pam Lahoud. She talked about getting the biggest bang for your buck. And this is very technical. She's doing lots of comparisons, and it's very useful. So definitely check that one out. Additionally, the Azure SQL community, tech community, has been really loud, doing a lot this month. Just to call out a few, we've got a big customer survey out, so definitely check out that Shape the Future of Azure SQL Products one. A lot of these things we've already talked about. All these updates usually have accompanying blogs, so check those out to dive deeper into anything we've talked about today. And then from the, from the other blogs that we monitor, I look at the Devs Corner blog. These two are really interesting. Retry logic is so important for moving to Azure SQL. And so we're working on building that in to our various drivers by default. So that's an interesting one, as well as if you're developing with Node. The database support blog is full of lessons learned from actual cases, support cases. And then now I'm going to pass it over to Marisa to give us a quick update on our upcoming events. Hey, Marisa.
Hey, Anna. Thanks for having me on this month.
Sure.
So I just wanted to give you all a quick update about the events that are happening this month. Obviously, we are always involved in lots of things, but I just wanted to give you a rundown of where we'll be at. So today, Bob Ward, actually, he was on the show earlier. He'll also be presenting at the South Florida SQL Server user group, excuse me. Tomorrow, there's an Azure migration virtual event, and that's on .NET App Migration and modernization and migration from end to end using data migration tools and Azure SQL. Raj is presenting there on that topic. On 4/12, which is next Monday, and 4/19, which is the following Monday, there will be two Azure SQL fundamental episodes. And so Anna and Bob have been doing the 6-week-long Azure Fundamentals event, and they'll be doing episode 5 next week and then episode 6 the following week. So stay tuned for those. And then on 4/28, Bob is doing another course on SQL Edge to Cloud with the database administration virtual group. And then I also wanted to give a plug for our May 4th event. You can learn how to build scalable and intelligent apps on Azure SQL faster with a free digital event hosted by our marketing team. And you can find a registration link to that in the blog that Anna has written. In addition, we have Data Exposed live shows coming up this month. We had our news episode today. We have a security episode on 4/21. And I'm super curious about the Something Old, Something New episode on 4/28. The title of that one is Do Kangaroos Prefer Cake or Frosting, generally speaking. I don't know what that means, but we'll all hopefully learn what that means on 4/28 with Buck Woody. And that's where we'll be at this month. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Marisa. Lots going on. Okay, so we have just a few more minutes. I just wanted to call out a few things that I always call out in the month. One is our Learn With Us Microsoft Learn module of the month. This is the 4th module on performance, and it also very much relates to my pick of the month. So pick of a month, I just pick something every month that I want to highlight. And this month I'm highlighting Learn Live. So Marisa mentioned we have 2 more coming up. This is the Azure SQL Fundamentals series, so 6 modules covering security, performance, availability, everything you want to know about Azure SQL. We're doing this live, Bob Ward and myself. If you go to that link at the bottom, you can actually get the calendar invite for this so you don't miss the last 2. And you'll also be able to watch the previous 4 on demand. It's a great series. You can basically go through the series and then pass DP300. At least that's what we've heard from viewers. And Marisa also mentioned this Innovate Today with Azure SQL, this big event we're planning with some really big folks like our CVP Rohan Kumar, Bob Ward, Buck Woody, Davide Mauri, just to name a few. There are many more people involved in this. You don't want to miss it. We're planning some very exciting demos for this. And so definitely go ahead and register for that. Again, that will be in the blog as well. And that kind of brings us to the end of our show. And I want to point everyone to our blog, which is hosted at aka.ms/newsupdate. It should have gone live at the beginning of this show. So if you want to go deeper or find references from anything from the show today, they're all there, one place, so you can kind of figure out where you want to dive deeper. As we close out the show, I just want to thank you all so much for joining us. It's been a little rocky at the beginning, but I think we got everything worked out. We had some great guests. We got all the news covered, and we'll be back here same time, not next week. We're actually taking next week off. So apart from next week, we'll be back same time, same place on Learn TV. And, you know, we hope to see you next time on Data Exposed.